Hi everyone. So I wanted to talk today about being alt and my feelings about that. And I also just want to say I'm not alt. Like, I'm not an alternative person stereotypically as to what you would personally think of when you would think of like an alt girl, right? I don't really know what I would classify. I don't really have like a brand or like a aesthetic per se. So this is coming from a place of like neutral. Like, I'm not like a fucking coquette girly. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just like, this is just like an observation, right? So I think this is the main premise of this episode. So if it doesn't interest you, because I think this could be like kind of offensive, please don't listen. I think that alt has become the new basic, and a lot of alt girls are the new pick-me girls, just repackaged in a way that isn't going to get them called out for being a pick-me. And I also think that the fetishization of alt girls has led to them becoming pick-me's. So I was actually having this conversation with a few of my friends because there's some alt girls that I know of, right? And it's performative. Like, when I see them post or go out or do things or dress a certain way, it feels inauthentic. And who am I to tell someone that they're not being authentic? You know, my opinion is null and void. It doesn't matter. But my opinion is that it's performative and inauthentic. So take it with a pinch of salt. If you think that you are one of these people and you think that what you're doing is authentic, don't listen to me. What do I know? But what I do think is that it's become popular to be alternative or to be goth coded or to be, you know, that kind of way. And I think that people aren't realizing that alternative culture was literally built off of subculture. And I did a lot of work in college and uni about subcultures, and subcultures are basically born from social exclusion. So the whole point of a subculture, you know, you look at underground music subculture in the UK, that a lot of that was born from the Windrush generation, you know, like people that came over from Jamaica and then they wanted to create something for themselves in a new place. You know, they started music and sound system culture. I have a podcast on that. I made it years ago. New Romantics in the 80s, a lot of that was about the LGBTQ community and, you know, wanting to dress a different way. And then you look at people like Bowie, and he really helped that movement, and, you know, like earlier and later movements around that. Like, that whole aesthetic was built around being excluded by straight men, mostly. I'm not saying that women can't be homophobic, but, you know, if you look at the movie This Is England, a lot of that, the culture addressed in that film was about trying to fit in when you don't, and finding a group of people that help you fit in, but then also still having these feelings of not fitting in. And, you know, this has been replicated throughout history so often, where a subculture takes over and becomes popular because the music is good and interesting and authentic. Like, if you look at drum and bass, right, I'm not like super into drum and bass anymore, but it's become so popular recently because of how authentic it was. And this is one of the reasons that I don't listen to it anymore, is because I think all these people have started listening to it because the music's good, yeah, but then they don't understand the core of like the meaning of that culture, right? And you can apply this to alt people, is, you know, people that dress alt or gothic or, you know, anything like that in itself is built off of so much oppression. Like, even if you look at like the fucking Salem witch trials, a lot of people that practice spirituality, divination, witchcraft, they dress that way to identify themselves and, you know, like almost reclaim the power of those people that were killed hundreds of years ago and people that were oppressed for having different beliefs. And this is why I think it's kind of like low-key offensive when you get like a group of girls that, and it's not just girls, I'm just saying girls because this is what I see in my area, right? You get a group of girls that know nothing about spirituality, witchcraft, or divination, or, you know, they don't know anything about the history that they're pulling from, but they like the aesthetic, right? That's absolutely fine. But then they create an identity based around that subculture without I don't know what the word would be, like paying homage or paying any kind of respect to where that comes from. You know, you can't just dress up. It's like when people culturally appropriate, you know, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, you know, when people wear the Scandinavian scarves, but that's literally based off like a dupatta from like Indian culture. And it's like, you can take a culture, but you can't just use it because you think it looks good and it makes you look cool and it makes you, you know, you're going to get more male attention from it, and then completely disregard the fact that it's rooted in fucking like pain for a lot of people. Like, you know, like sound system culture was rooted in racism, and, you know, fucking witchy alt culture was rooted in the mass murder of thousands of women. You know, like, history and fashion are so intertwined, and fashion is so linked to oppression, and a lot of what people wear is a signifier of ways in which they've been oppressed. And, you know, especially in these day and ages where we're more available, we can, you know, more easily wear certain things to convey messages without being burned at the stake. I think it's important that you have that understanding and that awareness that what you're putting out holds a message. And I know people are going to be like, well, it's not that deep. But it is that deep. You know that one scene in The Devil Wears Prada where she's saying, like, you think that you just picked this item up and didn't think anything of it, but it's the trickle-down effect and the bubble-up effect, and how important that is in terms of your identity. And, you know, you have your identity from yourself, but you also have your identity that you project out when you meet other people, when you post things, when you know someone's going to see something. They're not always as close-knit as people think. Some people project something out that's completely different from who they think they are because they think it's going to garner them like certain responses or, you know, whatever it is. It's just, I think maybe it's not so much about being alt as such. It's more the thing of like dressing for a subculture. And at the end of the day, right, I'm not coming on here telling you that if you like alt fashion but you don't care about the subculture that you can't wear it. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I think it's important to have the awareness that, like, I think a lot of times women do these things for the male gaze without realising. Like, you might think that you're dressing alternatively because that's how you want to dress. But if that wasn't popular and there weren't men in your DMs saying, oh, I want you to step on me, alt baddie, like, would you still dress like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, no, probably you wouldn't. If it was seen as like gross and horrible and you were going to get burned at the stake for it, you wouldn't do it. And I think that's the important thing is, like, I'm very aware that the way I dress is conventionally attractive, you know? Like, I dress in a conventional style and that's fine. But, like, I'm aware of that and I think it's an important thing to be aware of. I'm going to stop this episode, but I might make this into a few-parter because I think my brain's slightly switching off and I think this is a really important message and I want to come back to it when I'm fully coherent with more points to say. So this will be part 1 of my instalment.